Garron!
Commander?
I've come to a realization.
What is it, sir?
I don't like being happy.
Excuse me?
I don't enjoy enjoyment.
Okay.
But I still want to hunt.
Sure.
So I need you to tell me which monsters I can enjoy the least.
This is probably the weirdest request that you've ever asked of me.
This conversation has been a great start, Cotton. I didn't enjoy this at all.
Oh.
Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, there comes a time in every hunter's life where they have to come to a realization. Some monsters are bad, or, at the very least, worse than others. Today, that's what we'll be focusing on. But so I don't feel like a broken record, every single monster on this list today is one that I like a hell of a lot, and I think every monster in Iceborne deserves to be in the game and fills its spot excellently. However, there is always a bottom of the barrel, even if that barrel is full of gold. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the 5 worst monsters in Iceborne.
Number 5, Fayette Otis.
Everyone out! Get out! Get out of the water! Get out of the
Man, this is already so hard. I think Fayette Otis is fantastic, but when compared to the competition, he has to be somewhere on this list, and I've settled with right here. His fight takes great advantage of the snow and ice, and he has some cool animations. However, as the opening monster of the expansion, he just didn't have much of a chance in terms of complex or particularly interesting mechanics. And while he has unique attacks and cool moments, and his head shape is awesome as all hell, in the majority of ways, this monster is just a carbon copy of Gyarados stuck in an icy region. Hell, even his turf war with Bonbro is the exact same animation as Gyarados and Barroth. He spends a ton of time in deep snow, which makes sense, but it's also sort of annoying to fight in without the polar mobility skill, and like Gyarados, he is an ice monster, but more so only because he likes to live in the ice than because he actually has any proper control of it. And as much as I think that he might just be the best Piscine Wyvern I've ever had the personal pleasure of hunting, I do think that he is the 5th worst monster in the Iceborne expansion.
Number 4, Ebony Odogaron.
Now, if you look here, you'll see that the Odogaron is actually quite resistant to the dragon element.
This is where I expect to start hearing some backlash, as I'm sure Ebony Odogaron is the favorite monster of at least a few people, but in my opinion, he just sort of isn't all that impressive. Yes, he has Dragon Element, and very, very rarely uses that to properly augment his physical attacks, but for the most part, the inclusion of Dragon in this fight is a mid-air missile that is particularly good at catching you off guard. The attack is real neat, and I love the animation it has where he legitimately gets pushed back by the thrust of shooting out the dragon, but really he is just an Odogaron with an extra couple of moves that is allowed to be an invader, and honestly the invader-ness of it matches the Ebony Odogaron feel, which helps him out a lot for me, and his aesthetic design is actually what keeps him only over here at number 4. I think he's extremely close to being the best looking an Odogaron could ever possibly be, and I'm real proud of his edgy little cute face, but when compared to a regular Master Rank Odogaron, the changes as far as the fight goes are relatively tiny, and to be in a tier with a monster like Acidic Glavenus, who is just fantastic, really shines a bit of a light on Ebony Odogaron. So sorry, Ebony, but today is not your day.
Number 3, Viper Tobi-kadachi.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
I really hate that I have to do this, to put this gorgeous and graceful monster here, but after having fought regular Master Rank Tobi-kadachi a few times, you start to see that Viper Tobi isn't all that different, and a lot of what made me initially love Viper is actually just the Master Rank changes to Tobi-kadachi as a whole. Aesthetically speaking, Viper Tobi-kadachi is easily in my top 10 for the expansion. I love the original Tobi shape, but the fucking coloring on this furry flying snake squirrel just makes me intensely happy. He's just beautiful, no other way to say it. Unfortunately though, the majority of changes in this fight are just spiky projectiles, poison, and paralysis, most of which just comes from applying statuses to the moves that normal Tobi-kadachi already had. Looking at Viper in a vacuum, he's actually a very nice monster, and I can't help but appreciate him, but when you look at him compared to something like Coral Pookie as the greatest example, he's just not all that impressive. So as much as I hate to do this, Viper Tobi-kadachi, you are 3rd on this list.
Number 2, Scarred Yon Garuga.
victory is mine. We thank thee, Lord, that in thy mercy... Come on, then. What? How about you?
This one is a little more obvious in a sense, as in a world where any monster slot can be filled by any monster that could possibly exist, having one of the 28 in Iceborne be Scarred Young Garuga is a little bit of a letdown. However, game design doesn't exactly work like that, and it's more likely that if we didn't get Scarred Young, we would have gotten a similar subspecies of a different monster, or, you know, maybe even nothing in that slot. It would have been 27 monsters. Scarred Young Garuga only really does one thing different from his regular counterpart, that thing being his Spitfire, well, fire, where he literally spits fire, but not in like a rapping way, but I guess maybe also in that way. I mean, his Pro and Noob episode isn't out yet, so who knows really. The attack is super cool, I actually love the effect it has, but to say that he is a subspecies, but his only visual change is a scar and a missing ear is sort of sad. But also the fact that his existence straight up replaces a normal tempered Young Garuga sort of leaves a weird hole in the game. After all, it's not like tempered Anjanath is just Fulgur Anjanath, though that comparison isn't exactly fair, I guess. As a whole, Scar is very, very similar to his base friend, and again, in a vacuum, I think he's a fantastic monster and a fun fight, but in a game that already has regular Young Garuga and in a position that replaces the very idea of a regular tempered Garuga, I have to say that Scarred Young Garuga is a big old number 2.
Number 1, Shrieking Legiana.
He is exactly like you in every way. Except 1/8 your size.
Yeah, get it out. Yell at me if you want to, but I feel more correct putting this monster in this spot than I have about pretty much any other monster on this list. The changes from regular Master Rank Legiana are pretty damn minimal, with the majority of them just being her normal ice attacks now pop out of the ground with a slight delay instead of just putting ice on the ground. But seeing as nobody wants ice debuff anyways, no one was ever planning to walk over those patches once they're on the ground in the first place. She's up in the air all the time, which is just not fun for most weapons in Iceborne, and visually speaking, she literally looks like a Legiana that moved the Hoarfrost Reach. Like, if she was just standing still, I think her frosty bits were just from playing around in the snow a little bit too long. The concept of this monster and its place in the story is super cool. The idea that the flagship is carting these Legion over to choose its chosen representatives and imbue them with its own powers, but she just sort of doesn't live up to that concept and her story context as far as the fight goes, in my opinion. And I guess the best way I could possibly explain it is Shrieking Legiana, to me, feels like a monster that somebody created with mods off of a base Legiana once Felkana was added to the game. She doesn't even make proper sculptures or structures, and she doesn't do any beamy shenanigans. She's just a Legiana that someone left in the freezer a touch too long. So I'm sorry, Shrieking Legiana, but as much as I still do appreciate you, I consider you the worst new monster in Iceborne.
I bet she's the nicest, gentlest, warmest person ever. Oh, look at that. I've been impaled.
Alright everyone, I've been Cotton Dinosaur, and this has been my list of the top 5 worst monsters in Iceborne. Do you agree with my list? Who do you think are the worst monsters of the expansion? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or report important news about the Kingdom Animania. Rage, Cotton, and Hollow are all here, talking about the things you want to hear, so if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros. There's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.